I trusted my company for almost 10 years. When the new director arrived, I thought that the company would go from strength to strength. Instead, rumors gradually destroyed my reputation. My position was taken by an old acquaintance of my boss. I was sent to the restructuring department, which was created to force people to resign. But the truth about what the company was actually doing to its employees turned out to be much worse. I never imagined I would end up posting something like this on a relationship advice subreddit, but after everything that happened, the emotional side of it feels almost identical to being slowly pushed out of a long-term relationship. I'm 41 years old, living in Columbus, Ohio. For almost 10 years, I worked at a mid-sized software company that developed logistics and warehouse management systems for large clients. It wasn't a flashy startup, and it wasn't a tech giant either. It was the kind of company where people stayed for years, built careers, and got comfortable. I started there right out of college as a junior analyst. Over time, I worked my way up to team lead. By the end, I managed a group of 8 people and handled several of our biggest accounts. I knew the systems inside and out. I trained new hires. I fixed disasters when projects went sideways. I wasn't perfect, but I was solid. My performance reviews were always good. Clients renewed contracts. My team consistently hit targets. Things only started changing when a new director joined our department. His name was Kevin. At first, everyone liked him. He talked about innovation, transparency, and building stronger teams. He made a lot of speeches about modern leadership. But within a few months, it became clear that Kevin had brought his own people with him. 2 managers from his previous company joined shortly after he did. And then there was Eric. Eric was someone Kevin had worked with before. It was obvious Kevin trusted him. Eric was smart, no doubt, but he was also ambitious in a way that felt aggressive. Not long after Kevin arrived, a coworker I trusted mentioned something casually while we were grabbing coffee. "Have you heard Kevin wants to restructure the department?" I shrugged. "Restructures happen all the time." She hesitated, then said, "I heard he wants Eric in a leadership role, over your team, or maybe even instead of you." At the time, I honestly didn't take it seriously. I had been there almost a decade. I had results to back me up. But soon, small things started happening. In meetings, Kevin began cutting me off. He openly criticized my approach as being too traditional. When Eric presented ideas that were basically continuations of projects I had built, Kevin praised him like he had reinvented the wheel. Then the rumors started. Nothing direct, just things I overheard or heard through other people. Management isn't happy with Mike's team lately. Apparently, some clients complained. I heard communication issues were a problem. None of this was ever brought to me officially. Our metrics were strong. When I asked my direct manager, Mark, if there were any concerns about my performance, he looked uncomfortable. "No major issues," he said. "Kevin just wants to shake things up." That phrase kept coming up. Shake things up. A few weeks later, I was called into a meeting with Kevin, Mark, and an HR representative named Susan. Kevin spoke for most of it. He talked about restructuring resources, aligning teams, and improving efficiency. Then he dropped it casually. "We're moving you into what we call the Internal Transition Unit." The name sounded harmless, almost positive. But I had heard about it before. Not in detail. Just whispers. People who ended up there usually didn't stay long. I asked straight out if this was a demotion. Kevin smiled. "No, it's a lateral move, lower pressure, temporary while we realign the department." I asked why me. "We believe it's the best fit for the company right now." That was the only explanation. 2 days later, Eric was officially announced as the new lead over my former team. The same team I had built. That's when the rumors really exploded. Suddenly, people knew I had performance problems. Some said I fought with clients. Others said I couldn't adapt to new leadership. None of it was true, but the story spread fast. The internal transition unit was technically a real department. Every time I asked for work, I got the same answers. Nothing finalized yet. Still working on priorities. Meanwhile, HR removed access to many of my previous systems, saying they weren't necessary in this unit. Then my paycheck came slightly lower. HR explained it as a temporary departmental budget adjustment. Everything was wrapped in professional language. But the reality was simple. I was being isolated. I was sitting idle. And by design, I was becoming unproductive. 2 weeks later, I received my first written warning for low engagement. I asked what tasks I had failed to complete. Paul said, "You need to take more initiative." Initiative with what? There was nothing to do. At the same time, the office gossip kept evolving. Now people said I was difficult, that I resisted Kevin's changes, that I had attitude problems. People didn't dramatically avoid me. They just slowly pulled away. Short replies. No invitations to lunch. Careful conversations. Not because they hated me, because nobody wants to be associated with someone labeled as a problem employee. That part hurt the most. About a month in, my email account was partially wiped during what IT called an account transition. Years of documentation disappeared. Then one of the other employees in the transition unit simply stopped showing up. No announcement. The next day, his desk was empty. A week later, another person vanished. That's when I realized this wasn't temporary. This unit was a pressure chamber. People were placed there until they quit. The breaking point came when I received an automated email titled Exit Preparation Survey. It asked about my reasons for leaving the company. HR claimed it was a system error, but it didn't feel like one. Around the same time, Paul casually said during a check-in, "Some people find it easier to move on during transitions rather than struggle." It wasn't advice, it was a hint. By then, my salary had been reduced again. Not massively, but enough to make things stressful. And sitting every day doing nothing while being told I wasn't productive was mentally exhausting. I started doubting myself, wondering if maybe I really was the problem. That's when I decided to dig. I went on LinkedIn and searched for people who had left the company in the past few years. I messaged a handful carefully. Most didn't reply, but one guy named Jeremy did. His first message was, "Did they put you in the transition unit too?" We talked on the phone. His story matched mine almost exactly. New director came in, brought his own people. Rumors started. Transition unit, no work, warnings, reduced pay. He quit after 3 months. Then I talked to a woman named Amanda. Same pattern. Another guy after that. Then I found online reviews mentioning the transition unit as a way the company soft-fired people without severance. At that point, I knew it wasn't random. It was a system. I contacted a labor attorney. He explained that before accessing internal company communications, we had to formally file a legal complaint. Only after that would the court begin the discovery process. Discovery is where both sides are legally required to share any documents, emails, and records relevant to the case. We filed the claim. The company initially resisted. They said the emails were confidential. They said the requests were too broad. But the judge ruled that since the case involved forced resignations and workplace pressure, internal HR communications were relevant. That's when everything came out. Hundreds of emails between HR and upper management. Documents discussing low-risk employee exits. Spreadsheets tracking who was moved into the transition unit and how long it typically took before they quit. My name was on one of them, with an estimated timeline. When the company realized what had been uncovered, they immediately tried to settle. By then, several former employees had joined the case. The transition unit was officially shut down. Kevin was terminated. Have you ever seen something similar at your workplace? Do you think companies should be allowed to use tactics like this?